Okay, so continuing on. So we've got our audio file in, we've dragged it in, we've done some basic editing using the marquee tool to highlight certain areas, letting Logic do the cutting for us instead of us manually splicing things. Now we can do some various stuff. This particular video is just going to show how to do some stretching or compression of that and getting also into flex time, which is a neat feature within this. For now, I'm going to close out that media tab. I don't really need to see it. I can, of course, now make this zoom further if I want, but I don't. I don't need to at the moment. So what I want to show you first is how to stretch this. Now remember that I mentioned at the top right, this of course will loop that region, just over and over again what I've trimmed it down to.
Ye ice falls, ye ice falls.
Right, so it's just looping that. Don't want that. If I go to the bottom again, that's going to change my start or end point for the region. And as you see the entire audio file. It's not really gone away. I'm going to undo that, get it back to where we had it. Okay, that's good. Now, another thing you can do very easily from just any audio file, well, actually I lied. You can't do this, I was about to lie. You can do this with MIDI files too, with mixed results, but this is kind of designed for audio files, and that is stretching and compressing. So if I want to stretch this out, in other words, I want it to be longer. So what I'm going to do is go down to my bottom right corner. Normally that is, of course, the changing my end point of my region, but if I hold down Option, you see how the icon changes to these little lines on there. That's just so you know, not that you could really tell from the icon, but that's the stretching or compression type of icon. So now if I click and drag to the right, you can see how it's not opening the region, it's stretching out the audio that I already have. And I'm going to do it all the way until Logic basically stops me there. That's as far as it'll let me go. You can do it multiple times, but that's as far as it'll let you go to time is a certain percentage. Depending on what it's doing, it may take a moment to reprocess. You just won't be able to play anything until it's processed it. It's usually very quick, like it was here, but sometimes you'll see a comment saying, processing or something. So let's listen to this now, stretch.
Ye ice falls.
Okay, so pretty extreme. Now this tool, this stretching and compressing tool, was really designed to do very small changes. In other words, say you have somebody who they didn't quite hold a note long enough, they're just a little short or just a little long, so you want to compress or stretch out that audio at a certain place. So the smaller that you make it, the more natural it'll sound. We really stretch it to the maximum here. So we heard all these kind of errors in the audio file. In other words, it doesn't sound quite as clean as the original, but it's also kind of cool sounding. So we hear these these weird kind of sounds. Now I'm going to undo that. I'm not going to just re-put it back to where it was. I could, but that's going to also resample the audio and create some errors. So I'm going to actually do undo. So either go to edit, undo, or use your Command Z shortcut. It's back to where it was. So that's stretching it. I could compress it by doing the same thing, going to that bottom right corner, holding down Option, and then click and dragging to the left. And as you can see, it's compressing that.
Ye ice falls.
So it made it very
Ye
fast.
ice falls.
So there you go. You can go either way. As I mentioned, there's a fun little trick where you can actually stretch. And again, I could keep stretching and stretching. In fact, let me zoom out a bit. I'm going to stretch multiple times. And you saw a little kind of processing real quick came up. Stretch it again. There it goes. Usually just have to wait a second or two. Stretch it again as far as it'll let me go. Come on. Okay, as far as it'll let me go. Okay, let me zoom back out so I can kind of see. Let it finish doing that one. There it goes. Okay, now I'm going to stretch out. Now notice that it also has made the amplitude smaller and smaller as well. So that will sometimes happen. Well, it will happen every time that you stretch or compress because you are again, increasing errors into the actual digital file. But you could always bring it up with gain if it's too soft. Okay, so here's what this sounds like. We stretch it, what, 3 times maybe? This is the whole ye, which is going to last how long? Let's see. Let's put on beats and time. It's going to last, a minute for it to say ye. And then here's ice. So not really distinguishable as maybe someone speaking, but a very cool sound that, again, you might want to go and add effects to after this. If you open up the regions, you can also see that, it's actually created a new audio file. So we're no longer working with the original one, which was just the plain audio. We're working with one that was stretched. You can see it's created several other ones that were also stretched. So you might want to, once again, go in here and say, like this is ye, ice, falls, since that's the words I have. I'm going to call it super stretched or something. Name those things so that you are sure that you are clear. As you can see up here, it's renamed it. And rename the region as well, but it renamed the audio file. So I have a brand new audio file within that. Okay, so that's kind of cool. You can get some interesting effects and sounds by stretching stuff out. I'm going to get rid of this region, and now I'm going to drag in one of our regular ones. This is my Ye Ice Falls isolated. Drag that back in here. Whoa, I was so zoomed out that it looks like a tiny sliver. There we go. Okay, so let's get this back at the beginning. Just so every time I hit rewind, it's at the beginning. There we go. Okay, so and I'm going to zoom out or hit that Z key again to maybe not that much zoomed. There we go.
Ye Ice Falls.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. Now let's say I'm going to do something rhythmic, and I'm going to put this on custom where I like it, and I see my tempo is 120. I could turn on my metronome.
Ye Ice Falls.
And strangely enough, his original tempo was almost exactly 120.
Ye Ice Falls.
Not quite. In other words, each word he said was almost on the beat for 120, just coincidentally. But maybe I, for some reason, really want those to be on the beat. Well, I could do some editing where I splice and drag stuff left or right. Absolutely, I could do that. But Logic also has something called flex time. If you go up near the top where you can see, remember this is the button that resets the window, or rather it follows the metronome. So as your metronome gets to the edge on the right, it's going to kind of pop back in place. It'll keep scrolling for you. If you turn that off, of course, it'll just keep on going off the end of the screen, and you've got to drag around to find where your playhead is. But next to that is the flex time, show hide flex time button. This doesn't really turn it on exactly. It makes it so that you can see it and use it. So I'm going to turn on flex time, and you'll notice that any track, I'm going to add a couple tracks. Well, yeah, there we go. There's one. You'll notice that since I've turned it on, there is now this button for flex time. If I turn this view flex time, I don't see that, although I may have flex time in that track. So if I turn it on, I can see whether I've turned on flex time or not. If I turn it on, then I see some options right underneath it. And if I click on that, I'll see some flex time options, various algorithms to help for different types of audio files. So maybe you have a drum percussion loop. You might want to choose a flex time rhythmic one. It might do a little bit better with that. In this case, it's doing automatic slicing. I could change it to monophonic since I just have a single instrument here, single note. Whatever you want to do, but that seems appropriate. So I'm going to leave that on slicing, and you'll see, and I'm going to zoom in a bit here. There we go. So you'll see that it's already added one line for me, and this is essentially it's looking at this transient. That's on
Ye
ice.
Ice Falls. Ye Ice Falls.
So I can tell this is ye, ice, and then falls. I'm going to add another one roughly where I think falls is. So now I've got 2 points. And you see that when I point to it, it has a little symbol that appears. And I can actually drag, essentially it's going to drag this point, including all of this audio next to it, whatever direction I go. So I'm going to drag it to the left to make it exactly on beat 2.
Ye Ice.
Okay, it doesn't sound that different right now because we don't have the metronome on. And now I'm going to drag, let's get this playhead out of the way. Now I'm going to drag the falls, Ye Ice Falls, to beat 3. So now they're perfectly on beats 1, 2, 3. Let's turn on the metronome, we'll hear that.
Ye Ice Falls.
So it's perfectly in time. I could, of course, also be, change it. Let me change rhythm here.
Ye ice falls.
So I changed rhythm. I had a little glitchiness here because my point wasn't exactly where maybe it should have been. Maybe I need to, that's going to move it. But I'm probably going to have to readjust this particular point to isolate that. Maybe this will work. Let's see.
Ye ice falls.
Okay, so any way that you want to do that, you can. Now keep in mind, it's going to remember how you drag stuff around you drag the transients around. It's kind of like manually dragging a MIDI note information, like in the piano roll editor. We're just dragging left and right to fix the timing. It's kind of like that, but with an audio transient. As long as you have this button on for the track, it'll keep doing it. If you turn it off, it's returned to its original state. So if I turn it on, okay, it's there. It doesn't matter if this viewing the flex time is on, if in fact you don't want it to view it if you're doing something else. If you're doing automation or you want to start doing other type of stuff, copying this region, you probably do want to turn that off so you still see it in a normal state, but it is definitely still doing the flex rhythm type of timing change. Whoops, put that back on.
Ye ice falls.
Yeah, so that's a rhythm that we changed. Okay, so that's a basics of doing stretching compression and using that flex time for timing things. We will get into doing some flex pitch in the next video.